The metals felt heavier than they should have. Not physically. Rachel knew better than most how weight distributed across engineered surfaces, but in the way they pressed against her conscience as she stood in her father's study, cardboard boxes stacked like accusations against the wall. "Just throw them out, Rach." Her sister Diane's voice carried from the hallway, that particular pitch of impatience wrapped in false concern that Rachel had learned to recognize over 37 years. "Dad's been gone 3 months. Hanging on to this stuff won't bring him back." Rachel's fingers traced the frame of the largest display case. 73 military medals arranged in precise chronological order, each one mounted with the obsessive care Colonel James Morrison had brought to everything in his life. Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars, campaign ribbons from Vietnam through Desert Storm. A silver star that glinted dully in the afternoon light, filtering through dust-covered windows. "These aren't stuff, Dee. These are Dad's service record. His entire career. They're worthless metal nobody wants." Diane appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, her real estate agent blazer somehow managing to look expensive despite being off the rack from Nordstrom Rack. The estate appraiser said maybe $200 for the whole collection if we find the right military memorabilia dealer. That's if we're lucky. Rachel turned slowly, meeting her sister's eyes. $200. That's generous, honestly. Most of it's reproduction ribbons and common metals from the 80s and 90s. The appraiser said collectors only want World War II and Korea-era stuff now. Vietnam's already dated. Everything after is basically scrap. The casual dismissal landed like a slap. Rachel had watched their father polish these metals every Sunday morning for as long as she could remember, his weathered hands moving with the same precision he'd brought to field operations, to commanding men, to the 32 years he'd given the Army before retirement forced him into civilian life at 55. Dad spent 3 decades earning these. Dad spent 3 decades away from his family earning these. Diane's tone sharpened, the pretense of patience evaporating. "He missed my high school graduation for a deployment. He wasn't at Mom's funeral because he was in Afghanistan. These medals represent every choice he made to prioritize the military over us." The old argument, familiar as the scar tissue around old wounds. Rachel had no energy left to fight it. She'd spent the last 3 months managing her father's estate while working 60-hour weeks as a structural engineer at Morrison & Associates, a firm that bore her family name but would almost certainly be dissolved now that James Morrison's legendary reputation no longer anchored it. "The house closes in 2 weeks, Diane continued, softer now, as if sensing she'd pushed too hard. "We need to clear everything out. Marcus has the moving truck scheduled for Saturday. Goodwill's picking up the furniture Monday. The metals can go in the trash, or you can take them if they mean that much to you. But they're not staying here." Marcus, Diane's husband of 14 years, a commercial real estate developer who'd been circling their father's property in Arlington, Virginia, like a vulture the moment the cancer diagnosis went terminal. The house sat on 2 acres of prime land, 15 minutes from the Pentagon, worth $2.3 million according to the 3 competitive bids Marcus had arranged before James Morrison's body was even cold. Rachel and Diane would split the proceeds equally. $1.15 million each, minus estate taxes and fees. Enough to matter. Not enough to retire on, but enough to stabilize Rachel's precarious financial situation after Derek's departure 18 months ago had left her with their Arlington condo's full mortgage, his credit card debt he'd forgotten to mention, and Sophie's college tuition looming in 3 years. "I'll take them," Rachel heard herself say. "The medals. I'll take all of them." Diane's relief was immediate and obvious. "Good. Great. That's perfect." Marcus was worried you'd want to fight about it. "You know how sentimental you get about Dad's military stuff." Sentimental. As if mourning their father's legacy was a character flaw rather than basic human decency. The rest of the study, Rachel gestured at the walls lined with bookcases, the filing cabinets, the maps and tactical planning diagrams their father had kept for various assignments spanning 4 continents. Trash. All of it. The appraiser went through everything. Old paperwork, outdated tactical manuals, personal correspondence. None of it has value. The furniture's mid-century office surplus, not collectible. Marcus already checked with 3 antique dealers. Marcus had checked. Marcus had arranged. Marcus, who'd never served a day in uniform, who'd avoided the draft through family connections, who'd made millions developing shopping centers while James Morrison had spent 32 years defending the country Marcus exploited. Marcus had determined that a decorated colonel's life work was trash. Rachel swallowed the rage. It wouldn't help. Nothing would help now except signing the papers, taking her half of the house sale, and rebuilding the life Derek's infidelity had shattered. Sophie needed stability. Rachel needed to stop living paycheck to paycheck while pretending her engineering consultancy was thriving rather than barely surviving. Saturday, then, Rachel said, "I'll come by with my car. Take the metal cases." Perfect. Diane checked her watch, a Cartier that Marcus had given her for their 10th anniversary. "I've got a showing in McLean at 4. Text me if you need anything before Saturday." She vanished down the hallway, heels clicking against hardwood that would soon belong to whoever Marcus sold the property to, probably a developer who'd tear down Colonel James Morrison's carefully maintained colonial revival and replace it with a modern monstrosity maximizing square footage. Rachel remained in the study alone, surrounded by evidence of a life that would be erased within 2 weeks. She moved to the filing cabinets, pulled open drawers at random. Service records, deployment orders, fitness reports spanning 3 decades. Her father's handwriting filled the margins. Notes about personnel, tactical observations, lessons learned. The third drawer contained personal correspondence. Letters from fellow officers, condolences when Rachel's mother had died of ovarian cancer in 2009, recommendations he'd written for soldiers seeking civilian jobs after their service ended. Rachel lifted a stack, intending to sort through it, then stopped. What was the point? Diane was right about one thing. Hanging on to paperwork wouldn't bring him back. The funeral had been 3 months ago, military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, a flag-draped coffin, a 21-gun salute that had made Sophie cry. James Morrison, age 67, dead from pancreatic cancer that had metastasized before anyone caught it, gone within 6 months of diagnosis. He'd spent his last weeks at Walter Reed, lucid enough at the end to recognize Rachel during her daily visits, to ask about Sophie's progress in high school, to grip her hand with surprising strength and whisper, "Take care of my legacy, Rachel. Don't let them discard it." She'd promised. Of course she'd promised. What else could she say to a dying man who'd given everything to the Army and received a modest pension and a house full of memories in return? But legacy wasn't portable. Legacy didn't fit in cardboard boxes. Legacy couldn't be moved into Rachel's already crowded Arlington condo, where every square foot reminded her of Derek's absence, of 15 years of marriage that had ended when she'd found the text messages, the hotel receipts, the elaborate lies wrapped in his apologies that came too late to matter. She closed the filing cabinet drawer and returned to the display cases. 7 of them total, each one custom-built to her father's specifications, solid oak with glass fronts and interior lighting that made the metals glow like artifacts in a museum. The largest case held 73 medals arranged chronologically from his service in Vietnam through Desert Storm. The second contained unit citations and campaign ribbons. The third, smaller than the others, held his most personal decorations: the Bronze Star he'd earned in Baghdad, the Purple Heart from a roadside bomb in Mosul, the Silver Star that came with a classified citation Rachel had never been allowed to read. She'd asked him once about that Silver Star, during one of those rare moments when he'd seemed willing to talk about his service rather than deflect with humor or change the subject entirely. "Some medals represent courage under fire," he'd said, his eyes distant. "Others represent decisions you wish you'd never had to make. That one's both." He'd never elaborated. Whatever classified operation had earned him the Silver Star remained buried in Department of Defense files Rachel would never access. Heroism or horror, or some combination of both that her father had carried silently for the rest of his life. She took photographs of each display case with her phone, documenting their father's legacy before it vanished into her storage unit. The late afternoon light made the metals gleam, catching facets and edges with a beauty that belied their origin in violence and sacrifice. When she finished photographing, she began the work of dismounting the cases from the walls. Her father had installed them himself after retiring, using professional-grade anchors and mounting brackets that made removal difficult. She worked carefully, not wanting to damage the drywall more than necessary, knowing Marcus would complain about repair costs. The first 6 cases came down without incident. Heavy but manageable. She stacked them near the door, planning how she'd fit them into her Honda CR-V for the drive home. The 7th case, the one containing her father's most personal medals, resisted. The mounting bracket on the left side wouldn't release properly. Rachel tried adjusting the angle, applying more pressure, but something behind the wall caught, holding it in place. She set down her screwdriver and examined the problem more closely. The bracket had engaged with something that wasn't part of the original installation, a metal protrusion behind the drywall that her father's mounting hardware had accidentally hooked during installation. Rachel retrieved a flashlight from her father's desk drawer and angled it behind the partially removed case. The beam caught metal, old and corroded, extending horizontally behind the wall at chest height. She traced it with the light, following its path across the width of the display case and beyond. Her engineering instincts activated, overriding grief. This wasn't normal residential construction. The metal bar was too uniform, too deliberately placed. It extended at least 6 feet across the wall, positioned exactly where the display cases had concealed it. She removed the case completely, setting it aside with more force than necessary. Then she returned to the wall, tapping methodically across its surface with her knuckles. The sound changed 3 feet to the right of where the largest metal case had hung. Instead of the solid thud of drywall over studs, her knuckles produced a hollow echo, subtle but unmistakable. Rachel stepped back, studying the wall with fresh attention. Her father had painted this study himself 15 years ago when he'd retired, forest green walls that gave the room a military club atmosphere. The paint was even, professional-looking, showing no obvious seams or repairs. But now that she was looking for it, she could see a faint vertical line running from floor to ceiling about 4 feet to the right of where the metal case had hung. Another vertical line existed 4 feet beyond that. Between them, the wall surface was almost imperceptibly different, smoother, as if it had been finished more recently than the surrounding areas. She tapped again, moving systematically along the suspect section. The entire 4-foot width answered with the same hollow sound. Behind this wall, there was space where there shouldn't be. Her phone showed 4:47 p.m. Diane would be at her showing in McLean by now, Marcus at his office in Tyson's Corner. The house was empty except for Rachel and whatever her father had hidden behind 73 medals he'd spent 3 decades earning. She returned to his desk and searched through drawers more carefully this time, not looking for sentiment, but for evidence. Tools, fasteners, anything that suggested modification rather than simple mounting. In the bottom drawer, wrapped in an old Army t-shirt, she found a crowbar. Not a standard issue, but a custom-made demolition tool, 15 inches long, the kind Special Forces use for breaching operations. It was clean, well-maintained, and definitely not standard equipment for a retired colonel hanging pictures. Rachel held it, feeling its weight, understanding that her father had known exactly what he'd done when he'd mounted his medal collection over this wall. The placements hadn't been random. The cases hadn't been purely decorative. They'd been camouflage. She positioned the crowbar at the top of the suspect section where the vertical line suggested a seam. The tool caught an edge, something designed to be opened if you knew where to apply pressure. She pulled. The wall section moved. Not much, maybe half an inch, but enough to confirm it wasn't load-bearing drywall. It was a panel, reinforced and heavy, designed to look like wall, but function as a door. Rachel pulled harder, changing her angle, and the entire section shifted outward on hidden hinges. It moved smoothly despite obvious weight, balanced perfectly, revealing darkness beyond. She grabbed her flashlight and pointed it into the opening. Behind her father's study wall was a room. Not a closet, not a narrow void left by construction error. A room, perhaps 8 feet wide and 12 feet deep, with concrete walls and a drop ceiling that didn't match the rest of the house's architecture. The floor was concrete as well, industrial grade, poured and sealed with the kind of care military installations use for secure facilities. The air that emerged was cooler than the study, dry and faintly chemical, carrying the scent of preservatives and something else Rachel couldn't immediately identify. She stepped through the opening carefully, sweeping the flashlight beam across the hidden space. The walls were bare concrete, reinforced with rebar she could see at intervals. No windows, no ventilation visible. The ceiling contained recessed lighting that didn't respond when she tried the switch near the entrance. Her beam found what occupied the center of the room. A military footlocker, olive drab, 8 feet long and 4 feet wide, the kind used for transporting equipment during deployments. It sat on a raised platform, positioned precisely in the middle of the space like an altar or a coffin. Beside it, mounted on the wall at eye level, was a sealed envelope in a clear plastic sleeve. Rachel's name was written across the front in her father's unmistakable handwriting. She didn't open the envelope immediately. Training and instinct told her to document first, react later. She photographed the hidden room, the footlocker, the envelope. She measured the space with her phone's camera, estimating volume and construction details. This room had been built deliberately, probably during the original house construction in 1987 when her father had purchased the property after returning from his second tour in Germany. The concrete suggested bunker-style construction, the kind of secured space military personnel sometimes built for classified materials or emergency preparation. But her father had retired 15 years ago. Any classified materials he'd possessed would have been returned to the Department of Defense. This room had no reason to exist unless what it contained was personal rather than professional. Rachel returned to the envelope and removed it from the wall mount. The plastic sleeve was sealed with military-grade tape, the kind that left evidence if tampered with. Her father had wanted to ensure this envelope remained unopened until Rachel found it. She broke the seal and removed the contents. 2 pages, typed on her father's old manual typewriter, dated 3 weeks before his death. Rachel, if you're reading this, you found what I spent 32 years protecting. Not from enemies foreign or domestic, but from family who wouldn't understand its value, from a system that would have claimed it unjustly, and from my own temptation to use it before the right time arrived. The footlocker contains items I acquired during my service. Acquired legally, I should specify, though through circumstances classified enough that explaining them would require clearances you'll never have. What matters is that everything in that locker belongs to me absolutely, and through me, to you. I never touched it. Never opened it after sealing it in 1994, 2 years after Desert Storm. I built this room, hid it behind the only thing I valued more than what it contained. My service record, my medals, the visible evidence of what I gave the Army, and I waited. I waited for the right person. Your sister would have sold everything immediately, would have seen only dollar signs and shopping opportunities. Your mother, God rest her, would have been terrified of the responsibility. But you, Rachel, you have your mother's integrity and my sense of duty. You'll know what to do. Inside the footlocker are 3 things. 1. Documentation proving legal ownership and chain of custody. 2. The items themselves, sealed and preserved exactly as I received them. 3. Contact information for the one person who can help you understand their current value. A few critical warnings. Do not tell your sister. Do not tell Marcus. Do not tell anyone until you've verified what you have and secured proper legal representation. Trust no one who offers to help without understanding their incentives first. The items in this footlocker are not common. They're not easily valued. They require expertise most appraisers don't possess. Use the contact information I've provided. That person owes me a favor significant enough that they'll give you honest guidance, even if it costs them profit. Finally, understand that this wealth, if that's what it proves to be, came from chance and sacrifice in equal measure. I didn't earn it through heroism. I didn't steal it through corruption. I was in the right place at the right time to preserve something that would have been destroyed or lost forever. The Army couldn't claim it because they'd never known it existed. I couldn't sell it because doing so would have raised questions I couldn't answer. So I hid it. I waited. And now it's yours. Whatever you do with this, Whatever decisions you make, know that I trust you completely. You've already proven you can survive loss, betrayal, single parenthood, and financial hardship without compromising your principles. That's why this belongs to you and not your sister. Take care of Sophie. Take care of yourself. And take care of my legacy, not the medals on the wall, but the future I'm giving you now. Your father, Colonel James Morrison, U.S. Army, retired. Rachel read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking by the 3rd pass. The flashlight beam wavered as she tried to process what her father was saying without saying it directly. He'd hidden something valuable, something he'd acquired during military service through circumstances classified enough that he couldn't explain. Something he'd kept sealed since 1994, hidden behind his medal collection for 30 years, waiting for Rachel specifically to find it. She approached the footlocker slowly, aware that opening it would cross a threshold she couldn't uncross. Whatever lay inside had been important enough for her father to build a hidden room, to keep it secret from everyone, including his wife and daughters, to preserve it untouched for 3 decades. The footlocker wasn't locked. Military footlockers rarely were. They secured with heavy-duty latches and hinges designed for transport durability rather than security. Rachel undid the latches one by one, hearing them click open with mechanical precision. She lifted the lid. The interior was lined with dense foam, custom-cut to protect whatever it contained. Sealed plastic cases filled the space, each one labeled with numbers and dates in her father's handwriting. Rachel counted 12 cases total, varying in size from shoeboxes to something the size of a microwave. She removed the smallest case first, setting it on the concrete floor where her flashlight could illuminate it properly. The case was mil-spec, waterproof, crush-proof, hermetically sealed. The label read, Item 1A, acquired March 15, 1991, Al-Khafji, Saudi Arabia. Authenticated March 20, 1991, CENTCOM forward. Chain of custody documented. Rachel broke the seal and opened the case. Inside, wrapped in acid-free tissue paper, was a gold coin. Not a modern coin, not American currency. Something ancient, heavy, stamped with script Rachel didn't recognize and imagery that suggested Middle Eastern origin. The gold gleamed even in flashlight beam, its surface pristine despite obvious age. She lifted it carefully, surprised by its weight. This wasn't gold-plated or alloy. This was pure gold, probably 22 karat or higher, minted sometime before modern refining techniques became standard. Her father's letter had said the items were not easily valued and required expertise most appraisers don't possess. Rachel's engineering background gave her enough materials knowledge to recognize that this coin alone was worth thousands of dollars based purely on gold content, before considering any historical or numismatic value. And there were 12 cases in the footlocker. She returned the coin to its case and removed the next item. Similar size, similar labeling, Item 1B, same acquisition date and location. Inside was another coin, different design, but similar age and condition. She opened 6 more cases before stopping, her hands trembling too much to continue safely. Each case contained coins, sometimes one, sometimes multiple, all gold, all ancient, all documented with acquisition dates between 1991 and 1994. The larger cases remained unopened, but Rachel could guess what they contained based on the pattern. Her father had somehow acquired, legally, he'd emphasized, a collection of ancient gold coins during Desert Storm and its aftermath. She thought about timing and location. Desert Storm, 1991. Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, coalition forces, the brief ground war that had ended with Saddam Hussein's forces retreating in chaos. Her father had been there, part of CENTCOM forward operations, though he'd never discussed the details. And in the chaos of military operations in a region rich with archaeological history, somehow Colonel James Morrison had encountered antiquities that would have been destroyed or looted, had preserved them through proper chain of custody, had documented everything carefully enough to prove legal ownership, and had then hidden them for 30 years. Rachel did rough math in her head. 12 cases. Minimum 20 coins based on what she'd seen so far. Ancient Middle Eastern gold, authenticated by military sources, each coin weighing perhaps an ounce. Gold's current price was around $2,000 per ounce. Conservative estimate, $40,000 minimum based purely on bullion value. But ancient coins weren't valued like bullion. Rarity, historical significance, condition, all of that multiplied value exponentially. A Roman coin in excellent condition could sell for $50,000. Islamic Abbasid Caliphate dinars from the right era could fetch 6 figures. And her father had 12 cases full of them, hidden behind 73 military medals in a house about to be sold and demolished. She stood abruptly, the sudden movement making her dizzy. The concrete room felt smaller, the air thicker. Rachel forced herself to breathe slowly, to think methodically rather than emotionally. First priority, secure the footlocker. Second, find her father's contact information. Third, tell absolutely no one until she understood what she possessed. She photographed everything, the footlocker, the open cases, the coins themselves. Then she carefully resealed each case and returned them to their foam beds. The footlocker closed with satisfying authority, the latches clicking shut with the same sound they'd made when her father had sealed them 30 years ago. Rachel examined the hidden room more carefully now, looking for anything else her father might have left. The walls were bare except for the envelope mount. The floor showed no evidence of other hidden compartments. The room had been built for one purpose only, to secure the footlocker. She found the electrical panel behind a removable concrete panel near the entrance. Her father had wired the room independently from the house's main electrical system, probably to avoid drawing attention to the additional power consumption. The breaker was off, which explained why the recessed lighting hadn't worked. Rachel flipped the breaker, and the room illuminated properly for the first time. The transformation was startling. What had seemed ominous in flashlight beam became almost clinical in overhead LED lighting. The concrete walls were painted white, clean, and featureless. The footlocker sat on its platform, like cargo awaiting transport. In proper lighting, Rachel noticed something she'd missed before. Near the ceiling in the far corner, a ventilation system connected to what appeared to be an exterior wall. Her father had engineered this space for long-term storage, controlling humidity and temperature to preserve the footlocker's contents indefinitely. She turned off the lights and stepped back into the study, pulling the hidden panel shut behind her. It closed with perfect precision, the seam vanishing against the surrounding wall. Anyone examining this room would see only painted drywall, completely unremarkable. Her phone showed 6:23 p.m. She'd been here almost 2 hours. Diane would be finished with her showing, probably heading home to McLean, completely unaware that the trashy military memorabilia she'd dismissed contained the key to millions of dollars in hidden antiquities. Rachel returned to her father's letter and found the contact information he'd mentioned in the second page. Dr. Sarah Khoury, curator, Ancient Near Eastern Antiquities, Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York, personal mobile number. Sarah served with me during Desert Storm as a junior archaeology officer working with civil affairs. She helped document cultural heritage sites during combat operations. She's one of 3 people alive who know how I acquired these items. She'll remember. Call her. Trust her. Tell her Colonel Morrison kept his word. Rachel photographed the contact information and carefully folded the letter, placing it in her purse. Then she surveyed the study one final time, seeing it differently now. Her father had spent 15 years living in this house after retirement, walking past this wall daily, knowing what lay behind it, never touching it, never using it, never even telling his wife what he'd hidden there. That level of discipline bordered on obsessive. Or maybe it was just military training, the ability to compartmentalize, to secure objectives, to wait for the right moment before acting. Rachel understood now why her father had positioned his medals so deliberately over the hidden panel. Anyone who removed them would have discovered the room by accident, just as she had. But who would remove a decorated colonel's military decorations? Who would disrespect a father's legacy so casually? Diane would. Diane had already planned to trash them. If Marcus's moving crew had arrived Saturday as scheduled, They would have ripped the metal cases off the wall without care, might have discovered the hidden panel, might have called Marcus, who would have called lawyers who would have frozen everything while they sorted out ownership and tax implications. But Rachel had volunteered to take the metals herself. She'd removed them carefully, respectfully, and in doing so, she'd found what her father had intended only her to find. "Take care of my legacy," he'd whispered at Walter Reed. "Don't let them discard it." She'd thought he meant the metals. Now she understood he'd meant what the metals protected. Rachel didn't call Dr. Sarah Corey that night. Instead, she sat in her father's study until darkness filled the windows, thinking about discipline and timing. Two things Colonel James Morrison had valued above almost everything else. Her father had waited 30 years before revealing his secret. Rachel could wait 12 hours before making a phone call that would change her life irreversibly. She left the house at 8:47 p.m., locking the door behind her with the spare key her father had given her years ago. The metal cases remained stacked near the study entrance where she'd left them, exactly as Diane expected to find them. The hidden room remained sealed behind its painted panel, invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. The drive to her Arlington condo took 30 minutes through evening traffic. Rachel moved on autopilot, her engineer's mind running calculations she couldn't yet solve. 12 cases, minimum 20 coins. Historical value unknown. Legal ownership documented, but through classified circumstances she couldn't verify. And a 2-week deadline before Marcus's moving crew emptied her father's house and potentially discovered what she'd found. Sophie was asleep when Rachel arrived home, the apartment dark except for the hallway light her daughter always left on. Rachel checked on her, 15 years old, headphones still in, phone charging beside her pillow, and felt the familiar twist of protective fear that had defined her life since Derek left. Sophie deserved stability, deserved college without crushing debt, deserved a mother who wasn't constantly calculating whether they could afford groceries and car insurance in the same month. Whatever lay in her father's footlocker might provide that stability, or it might prove to be worthless reproductions, expensive gold but historically insignificant, leaving Rachel with a tax burden and no answers. She needed expertise before she needed hope. Rachel waited until 9 a.m. the next morning before calling the number her father had provided. The phone rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered, professional but warm. "Dr. Corey. Dr. Corey, my name is Rachel Morrison. I'm calling about my father, Colonel James Morrison." James. The warmth vanished, replaced by something careful and distant. "When?" 3 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. Silence stretched for 5 seconds. 10. Rachel heard traffic noise in the background, voices speaking rapidly in what might have been Arabic. "I'm sorry," Dr. Corey said finally. "I didn't know. We hadn't spoken it's been years. Your father was a good man, a principled man. He left me your contact information, along with instructions to call you about items he acquired during Desert Storm." Another pause, shorter this time. "You found them. Yesterday. In a hidden room behind his metal collection. And you're calling me now, less than 24 hours later, which means you haven't told anyone else yet." Dr. Corey's voice sharpened with something between approval and concern. "Smart. Your father trained you well, even if you didn't realize it was training." Rachel moved to her kitchen window, watching morning traffic on Wilson Boulevard. "He said you'd remember that you helped document cultural heritage sites during combat operations." "I did, and I remember exactly which sites, which dates, and which materials went missing during the chaos." Dr. Corey's tone carried weight that suggested this wasn't a casual conversation. "Rachel, may I call you Rachel?" "Yes. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound dramatic, but it's not exaggeration. If your father left you what I think he left you, you're now in possession of one of the most significant private collections of early Islamic antiquities in North America. Significant both historically and financially." Rachel's hand tightened on her phone. "How significant?" "That depends entirely on what survived, condition, provenance documentation. But if Colonel Morrison preserved everything the way I remember him preserving it." Dr. Corey paused. "Rachel, I need to see the items in person. I need to examine documentation. I can't give you numbers over the phone based on assumptions. Understand, do you? Because I need you to understand something else. The antiquities market is complicated, especially for items acquired during military operations in Iraq and Kuwait. Your father was scrupulous about chain of custody. I was there, I witnessed it, but that doesn't mean everyone will accept his documentation without challenge. Rachel felt cold spreading through her chest despite the apartment's warmth. Are you saying they might not be legally mine? I'm saying that ancient coins from the Middle East attract attention. Governments have claims. Museums have interests. Collectors have money. All of that creates pressure, and not all of that pressure is legal or ethical. Dr. Corey's voice softened slightly. Your father knew that. It's why he hid everything for 30 years. He was protecting you from that pressure until the timing was right. And is the timing right now? That's not my decision. But if you're asking whether the statute of limitations has passed on most international claims, whether documentation standards have evolved in your favor, whether the antiquities market has matured enough to value preservation over provenance fights, then yes. The timing is better now than it was in 1994. Rachel made her decision. When can you come to Virginia? I'm in Cairo right now, finishing field work. I can be on a flight tonight, arrive JFK tomorrow morning, Amtrak to D.C. by afternoon. Can you meet me Thursday? Thursday works. Good. Don't open any more cases than you already have. Don't photograph anything beyond what you've already photographed. Don't discuss this with family, friends, or especially not with anyone who might have a financial interest in your father's estate. His house sells in 2 weeks. My sister's husband has a moving crew scheduled for Saturday to clear everything out. Dr. Corey's response came immediately. Cancel it. Delay it. Lie if you have to. If that crew discovers what you found, word will spread faster than you can contain it. I can't cancel. My sister co-owns the property. She'll want to know why I'm interfering with the sale. Then remove the footlocker before Saturday. Bring it somewhere secure where you control access. Your father trusted you with this, Rachel. That means he trusted your judgment about when to act and when to wait. Don't let someone else's timeline override your own. They arranged to meet Thursday at 2 p.m. at Rachel's condo. Dr. Corey provided her email for sending photographs of the documentation. Rachel promised to move the footlocker before weekend. After the call ended, Rachel sat in her kitchen trying to process what she'd just learned. Her father's hidden collection wasn't just valuable. It was historically significant. It attracted attention from governments and institutions. It required expertise she didn't possess and protection she couldn't yet provide. And she had 6 days before Marcus's crew potentially discovered what she'd found. Rachel called Diane at 10:30 a.m., keeping her voice steady. Hey, Dee, quick question about Saturday. Could we push the moving crew back a week? I realized I need more time to go through Dad's files before we clear everything out. Diane's irritation was immediate. Rachel, Marcus already scheduled the crew. They're coming from Baltimore specifically for this job. Rescheduling costs money. I'll pay the rescheduling fee. There are some engineering documents in Dad's study that might be relevant to a project I'm working on. I need time to sort through them properly. Engineering documents? Dad was Army, not an engineer. He consulted on military facility design after he retired. I think he kept structural surveys that might help with a renovation assessment I'm doing in Arlington. The lie came easily, which disturbed Rachel more than she wanted to admit. But Dr. Corey was right. Once word spread about ancient antiquities, Rachel would lose control of the narrative. Better to lie now than fight legal battles later. Fine, Diane said, exasperation clear. But you're paying the rescheduling fee, and I'm telling Marcus you're the reason for the delay. We can't keep pushing the closing date. The buyers are already antsy about timing. 1 week. That's all I need. 1 week. And Rachel, whatever sentimental attachment you have to Dad's old paperwork, it's not worth jeopardizing this sale. We both need this money. Don't let grief make you irrational. Rachel ended the call before she said something she'd regret. Irrational, as if wanting to preserve their father's legacy was a character flaw rather than basic human decency. She spent the rest of Tuesday planning logistics. The footlocker was too large and heavy to move alone. 8 feet long, for feet wide, solid military construction even before considering its contents. She'd need help, which meant trusting someone. Walt Henderson lived 3 doors down from Rachel's condo, a retired Marine Corps gunnery sergeant who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan before a roadside bomb had ended his career and left him with a prosthetic leg and a cynical sense of humor. He and Rachel had become friends through the building's residents association, bonding over shared military family experiences and mutual disdain for the condo board's petty bureaucracy. Walt answered on the second ring. "Henderson." "Walt, it's Rachel Morrison. I need a favor that requires muscle, discretion, and a truck." "You planning to rob a bank or just hide a body?" "Neither. I need to move something heavy from my dad's house to my storage unit. Something I'd rather my sister not know about until I understand what it is. Family drama. My favorite." Walt's tone shifted to something more serious. "What are we talking about?" "Weight, dimensions, fragility. Military footlocker. Maybe 300 pounds. Not fragile, but valuable. I need to move it tomorrow night after dark." "After dark." Definitely not suspicious. But his voice carried amusement rather than concern. "Yeah, I can help. My truck's available. You buying dinner?" "I'm buying whatever you want, including your discretion about what you see." "Deal. Text me the address. I'll bring the hand truck and tie-downs." Wednesday evening arrived cold and clear. Rachel met Walt at her father's house at 8:30 p.m. after Diane had left from her own visit to the property. Walt pulled up in his F-150, parking in the driveway with practiced efficiency. He emerged from the truck moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd learned to navigate the world with a prosthetic limb. Careful but confident, compensating without appearing to. "Nice place," he said, surveying the property. "Your dad have money or just good timing on real estate?" "Good timing. Bought in 1987 when Arlington was still affordable." Those were the days. Walt retrieved his hand truck from the truck bed. "Where's this footlocker?" Rachel led him through the house to the study, deliberately not looking at the wall where the hidden room lay. The metal cases still stood stacked near the entrance. "Those your dad's?" Walt nodded toward the display cases. 32 years of service. Respect. Walt's demeanor shifted subtly, the way military personnel often responded to evidence of serious service. "Your sister really wanted to trash these?" "According to the estate appraiser, they're worth maybe $200. Not worth keeping." Walt snorted. "Estate appraisers are useless. These cases alone are worth more than $200. Custom oak, professional mounting. Your dad built these himself after he retired. Then they're worth whatever someone's willing to pay to honor his memory, which isn't the same as market value." Walt turned his attention back to Rachel. "But you didn't bring me here for metal cases. Where's the footlocker?" Rachel hesitated, weighing security against necessity. Walt noticed. "Whatever you're protecting, Morrison, I've kept worse secrets in worse places. You think I survived Afghan operations by running my mouth." She made her decision and opened the hidden panel. Walt went very still as the room revealed itself. His eyes moved systematically across the concrete walls, the reinforced construction, the footlocker on its platform. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality, respect mixed with understanding. "Your dad was Special Forces? CENTCOM forward during Desert Storm. I don't know all the details." "You don't need details. This room tells me everything." Walt stepped into the hidden space carefully, examining the construction with professional attention. Reinforced concrete, independent electrical, climate control. Your dad built a secure facility inside a residential structure. That's not amateur work. Can you help me move the footlocker? Yeah, but first I'm going to ask you one question, and I need you to answer honestly. Walt turned to face her directly. Is whatever's in that footlocker going to bring legal trouble to your door? Rachel met his eyes. My father documented chain of custody for everything inside. He acquired it legally during military operations. But it's valuable enough that other people might challenge ownership if they knew it existed. Walt considered this. Valuable how? Drugs, weapons, money, ancient antiquities, gold coins from the Middle East. Historically significant and legally mine, according to my father's documentation. Shit. Walt ran his hand over his jaw. Yeah, that'll attract attention. Smart move hiding it until you know what you have. He moved to the footlocker and tested its weight, rocking it slightly. 300 pounds is conservative. We're looking at closer to 400 with whatever's inside. Can we move it? We can move anything with proper equipment and bad enough motivation. Walt returned to his truck and came back with a heavy-duty dolly design for appliances and industrial equipment. Together, they worked the footlocker onto the dolly, Rachel steadying while Walt maneuvered with practiced efficiency. Getting it out of the hidden room required careful angling through the narrow opening. Walt managed it with minimal scraping, protecting both the footlocker and the walls. Once in the study, the path to the front door was straightforward. They loaded the footlocker into Walt's truck bed and secured it with ratchet straps Walt triple-checked. Rachel closed and locked the house, taking one last look at the study through the window. The hidden room stood empty now, its purpose fulfilled. Whatever happened next would happen elsewhere. The drive to Rachel's storage unit took 20 minutes. Walt helped her maneuver the footlocker into the climate-controlled unit she'd rented under her name alone, positioning it in the back corner behind boxes of Sophie's childhood belongings and Rachel's old engineering textbooks. When they finished, Walt leaned against the storage unit's wall, breathing slightly harder than usual. "You good?" Rachel asked. "Prosthetic doesn't love stairs." "I'm fine." He gestured toward the footlocker. "That thing's going to change your life, Morrison. You ready for that?" "No, but I don't have a choice. Everyone has choices. Your dad chose to hide this for 30 years. You could choose to do the same. Seal it back up, never open it again, live your normal life." Rachel thought about Sophie sleeping with her phone charging beside her pillow, about the condo mortgage she could barely afford, about Derek's departure that had left her scrambling to rebuild stability from nothing. "My normal life isn't working anymore," she said quietly. "Maybe it's time for something different." Walt nodded as if she'd confirmed something he already suspected. "Call me if you need muscle again. And Morrison, keep this close. The more people who know, the more complicated it gets." "I know. I'm serious. Family especially. Money makes people creative with justifications." He left her standing in the storage facility's fluorescent lighting, surrounded by boxes containing her past and a footlocker containing her potential future. Rachel locked the unit carefully, pocketing the key. Thursday arrived with rain that turned DC's morning traffic into chaos. Dr. Sarah Corey called at 11:30 a.m. from Union Station. "I'm early. Is there somewhere we can meet that's not your home? Somewhere with good lighting and privacy." Rachel gave her the storage facility's address. They met in the parking lot at 12:45 p.m., Dr. Corey arriving in a rental car, dressed practically in cargo pants and a field jacket that had seen serious use. She was 50-something, Middle Eastern features, gray threading through dark hair, pulled back efficiently. Her handshake was firm, her eyes sharp and assessing in a way that reminded Rachel powerfully of her father. "You look like him," Dr. Corey said. James had the same expression when he was evaluating structural integrity under stress. "I'm a structural engineer. Apparently the trait is genetic. Or learned. Your father was one of the best tactical engineers I worked with. He saw problems 3 steps ahead." Dr. Corey gestured toward the storage facility. "Should we?" Rachel led her to the unit and unlocked it. The footlocker sat exactly where Walt had positioned it, patient and heavy in the dim interior lighting. Dr. Corey approached it slowly, the way archaeologists approach delicate excavations. She didn't touch it immediately. Instead, she circled it once, examining latches and seals, reading the labels Rachel's father had affixed 30 years ago. "He sealed it in 1994, she said, not quite a question. "According to his letter. Then he kept his word longer than I expected." Dr. Corey crouched beside the footlocker, her fingers hovering over the latches. "Rachel, before we open this, I need to tell you something about your father and how he acquired these items." Rachel leaned against the storage unit wall, preparing herself. March 1991. Desert Storm's ground war had ended 3 days earlier. Iraqi forces retreated from Kuwait in chaos, looting everything they could transport. Your father was part of a civil affairs team working to secure cultural heritage sites ahead of the retreating army. Dr. Corey's voice took on the cadence of someone recounting events they'd witnessed personally. We reached a museum in Al-Khafji that Iraqi forces had occupied during their brief control of the city. They'd ransacked it, broken display cases, scattered artifacts, taken anything valuable. Enough to carry. The museum director was dead, killed defending his collection. What remained was scattered across the floor like trash. Rachel listened without interrupting. Your father and I spent 6 hours documenting what we found. Most of it was destroyed, pottery shattered, manuscripts burned. But we found a sealed vault the Iraqis had tried to breach, but failed. Inside were 12 cases of gold coins dating from the Abbasid Caliphate, 8th through 11th century. Museum quality. Historically significant. Worth millions even then. And my father took them. He preserved them. Dr. Corey corrected firmly. The museum was destroyed. The director was dead. Iraqi forces would return once coalition forces withdrew. Everything in that vault would have been looted within days if we'd left it. So he documented chain of custody and kept them. He did what any responsible officer would do in chaos. He secured cultural heritage materials and documented everything meticulously. The problem was that officially reporting the find would have triggered months of bureaucratic process. The coins would have been seized as war trophies, fought over by multiple governments, possibly disappeared into private collections through corruption. Dr. Corey stood, meeting Rachel's eyes directly. Your father made a choice. He believed those coins would be safer in his possession, preserved properly, than in any government's custody during the chaos of 1991. He was probably right, but it meant he couldn't officially report what he'd found, and you helped him hide it. I witnessed his documentation. I confirmed authenticity. I provided enough official paperwork that if anyone ever challenged ownership, he'd have evidence of proper chain of custody. Dr. Corey's expression remained steady. I also made him promise not to sell anything until enough time had passed that most legal challenges would be moot. 30 years. 30 years. Long enough for the statute of limitations on most international claims to expire. Long enough for the antiquities market to mature. Long enough for your father to be certain he wasn't profiting from chaos at someone else's expense. Rachel processed this carefully. So legally, these coins are mine. Legally, they're yours based on documented chain of custody from 1991. Morally, they're yours because your father spent 3 decades not touching them, not selling them, not benefiting from them in any way. He waited until the ethics were as clear as the legality. Dr. Corey gestured toward the footlocker. Now I need to see what survived. Open it. Rachel undid the latches and lifted the lid, revealing the 12 sealed cases she'd seen days earlier. Dr. Corey exhaled slowly. All 12. He kept everything. She removed the first case with reverent care, examining the seal before breaking it. The gold coin inside gleamed in the storage unit's overhead light. Dr. Corey studied it with a jeweler's loupe she produced from her field jacket, turning the coin slowly, examining both faces and the edge. Abbasid Caliphate dinar, Caliph al-Mahdi, minted 775 CE in Baghdad. Exceptional condition. She looked up at Rachel. Do you understand what exceptional means in numismatics? Not really. It means this coin looks like it was minted yesterday instead of 1,250 years ago. It means collectors will pay premium multiples over gold value for the privilege of owning something this well-preserved from this era. Dr. Corey opened the next case, then the next, her movements becoming faster as excitement overcame professional restraint. Each coin received the same careful examination, the same whispered identification. Al-Rashid, 800 C. Al-Mamun, 825 C. This one's rare, very rare. And this one, Rachel, this is museum quality, Metropolitan would pay. She stopped herself, setting the coin down carefully. How much? Rachel asked. I can't give you exact numbers without formal appraisal. But conservatively, based on what I'm seeing, Dr. Corey gestured at the open cases. Each coin is worth between $50,000 and $300,000, depending on rarity, condition, and historical significance. You have approximately 70 coins across 12 cases. Rachel did the math automatically, her engineer's brain calculating ranges. That's 3.5 million on the low end. That's the low end, assuming average coins. What your father preserved aren't average. Dr. Corey opened one of the larger cases and went very still. Inside, nestled in foam, were 3 coins larger than the others. Dr. Corey lifted one with hands that trembled slightly. Gold presentation dinar, Caliph Harun al-Rashid, 802 CE. These weren't currency. These were gifts given to foreign dignitaries. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. There are maybe 5 of these in existence. The British Museum has one. The Louvre has one. The Smithsonian has been trying to acquire one for 40 years. How much? Dr. Corey looked at Rachel with an expression that mixed professional excitement and personal concern. At auction, with proper provenance, 2 to 5 million. Each. The number sat between them like a physical presence. Rachel felt her knees weaken and sat down hard on a cardboard box. 3 presentation dinars at 2 million minimum, she said slowly. Plus 67 other coins at, what did you say, 50 to 300,000 each. Assuming average distribution, probably 12 million total across the full collection. But Rachel, Dr. Corey crouched beside her. That's auction value with established provenance, proper documentation, and buyers who trust the chain of custody. Getting to that point requires expertise, legal representation, and time. How much time? 6 months minimum for proper authentication and documentation. Possibly longer if anyone challenges ownership. Rachel thought about the house sale closing in 2 weeks, about Diane and Marcus who expected their share of the estate, about Sophie's college tuition looming in 3 years. Can I sell some quickly? Just enough to handle immediate needs. Dr. Corey considered this. The smaller dinars, yes. Less historically significant pieces that won't attract as much scrutiny. I can connect you with reputable dealers who'll pay fair value for authenticated Islamic gold. You could liquidate 5 or 6 coins within a month, bring in maybe 300,000. 300,000. Rachel laughed, the sound verging on hysterical. My sister wanted to trash my dad's medals for $200. The display case hiding this was worth 300,000 times more than she thought. That irony isn't lost on me. Dr. Corey returned the presentation dinar to its case with exquisite care. But Rachel, you need to understand something. The moment you start selling, word spreads. Dealers talk. Collectors pay attention. Within 6 months, everyone in the antiquities world will know a significant Islamic collection surfaced from military acquisition during Desert Storm. And governments will ask questions. Museums will make offers. Collectors will approach you directly. Some of that attention will be legitimate. Some won't be. You need legal protection before you're publicly associated with these coins. Rachel stood, moving to the footlocker, looking at the sealed cases that represented her father's 30-year secret. He protected me by hiding this until the timing was right. Now, I have to protect myself by revealing it carefully. Exactly. Dr. Corey began resealing the open cases with methodical precision. Here's what I recommend. We document everything properly. Photographs, weights, measurements, provenance from your father's records. I'll authenticate based on my expertise and my witness to the original acquisition. Then we bring in a lawyer who specializes in antiquities law before we approach dealers. Do you know someone? I know several. The best is Marcus Chun at Heritage Law Group in New York. He's handled cases involving military-acquired antiquities before. He'll know exactly how to establish clean title. Rachel noticed the name. Marcus. My brother-in-law is Marcus. Different Marcus. This one's trustworthy. Dr. Corey pulled out her phone. I'll call him, explain the situation, see if he can meet us next week. Meanwhile, you keep this footlocker secure and tell absolutely no one what you have. My sister's going to ask questions when I keep delaying the house clearing. Let her ask. You're under no obligation to explain family heirlooms you inherited privately. Dr. Corey's expression hardened slightly. Rachel, I watched your father document these coins in 1991. I watched him make the choice to preserve them rather than report them through channels that would have lost them to bureaucracy or corruption. He trusted you with this legacy. Don't let family pressure make you careless with that trust. Inside, nestled in foam, were 3 coins larger than the others. Dr. Corey lifted one with hands that trembled slightly. Gold presentation dinar, Caliph Harun al-Rashid, 802 CE. These weren't currency. These were gifts given to foreign dignitaries. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. There are maybe 5 of these in existence. The British Museum has one. The Louvre has one. The Smithsonian has been trying to acquire one for 40 years. How much? Dr. Corey looked at Rachel with an expression that mixed professional excitement and personal concern. At auction, with proper provenance, 2 to 5 million. Each. The number sat between them like a physical presence. Rachel felt her knees weaken and sat down hard on a cardboard box. 3 presentation dinars at 2 million minimum, she said slowly. Plus 67 other coins at, what did you say, 50 to 300,000 each. Assuming average distribution, probably 12 million total across the full collection. But Rachel, Dr. Corey crouched beside her. That's auction value with established provenance, proper documentation, and buyers who trust the chain of custody. Getting to that point requires expertise, legal representation, and time. How much time? 6 months minimum for proper authentication and documentation. Possibly longer if anyone challenges ownership. Rachel thought about the house sale closing in 2 weeks, about Diane and Marcus who expected their share of the estate, about Sophie's college tuition looming in 3 years. Can I sell some quickly? Just enough to handle immediate needs. Dr. Corey considered this. The smaller dinars, yes. Less historically significant pieces that won't attract as much scrutiny. I can connect you with reputable dealers who'll pay fair value for authenticated Islamic gold. You could liquidate 5 or 6 coins within a month, bring in maybe 300,000. 300,000. Rachel laughed, the sound verging on hysterical. My sister wanted to trash my dad's medals for $200. The display case hiding this was worth 300,000 times more than she thought. That irony isn't lost on me. Dr. Corey returned the presentation dinar to its case with exquisite care. But Rachel, you need to understand something. The moment you start selling, word spreads. Dealers talk. Collectors pay attention. Within 6 months, everyone in the antiquities world will know a significant Islamic collection surfaced from military acquisition during Desert Storm. And governments will ask questions. Museums will make offers. Collectors will approach you directly. Some of that attention will be legitimate. Some won't be. You need legal protection before you're publicly associated with these coins. Rachel stood, moving to the footlocker, looking at the sealed cases that represented her father's 30-year secret. He protected me by hiding this until the timing was right. Now, I have to protect myself by revealing it carefully. Exactly. Dr. Corey began resealing the open cases with methodical precision. Here's what I recommend. We document everything properly. Photographs, weights, measurements, provenance from your father's records. I'll authenticate based on my expertise and my witness to the original acquisition. Then we bring in a lawyer who specializes in antiquities law before we approach dealers. Do you know someone? I know several. The best is Marcus Chun at Heritage Law Group in New York. He's handled cases involving military-acquired antiquities before. He'll know exactly how to establish clean title. Rachel noticed the name. Marcus. My brother-in-law is Marcus. Different Marcus. This one's trustworthy. Dr. Corey pulled out her phone. I'll call him, explain the situation, see if he can meet us next week. Meanwhile, you keep this footlocker secure and tell absolutely no one what you have. My sister's going to ask questions when I keep delaying the house clearing. Let her ask. You're under no obligation to explain family heirlooms you inherited privately. Dr. Corey's expression hardened slightly. Rachel, I watched your father document these coins in 1991. I watched him make the choice to preserve them rather than report them through channels that would have lost them to bureaucracy or corruption. He trusted you with this legacy. Don't let family pressure make you careless with. Rachel kept her voice neutral. The moving cruise scheduled for next Saturday. We'll make the closing date. That's not what I'm calling about. Diane's tone shifted to something more aggressive. Marcus wants to do a final walkthrough this weekend. Make sure we haven't missed anything valuable. He's concerned we might be leaving money on the table. Cold spread through Rachel's chest. We already had the estate appraiser go through everything. That was 3 weeks ago. Marcus thinks we should double-check. He's bringing his own appraiser Saturday morning at 10. You should be there. This was the complication Dr. Corey had warned about. Once word spread that something valuable might exist, people started looking more carefully. Marcus probably suspected nothing, but his commercial real estate instincts made him cautious about overlooking assets. I can't Saturday morning. I have a work commitment. Rachel, this is important. We're talking about potentially thousands of dollars we might miss. Fine. I'll try to be there. Rachel needed to redirect. What's Marcus's appraiser looking for specifically? Anything the first appraiser missed. Antique furniture, collectibles, military memorabilia that might have value beyond the obvious stuff. Military memorabilia. The metal cases still sat in their father's study where Rachel had left them. If Marcus's appraiser examined those cases carefully, might they notice evidence of the hidden room? The mounting brackets that had been disturbed, the paint that didn't quite align perfectly after Rachel had resealed the panel? Tell Marcus I'll meet him there Saturday at 10, Rachel said, deciding. Better to be present and control what the appraiser examined than let Marcus and his expert explore unsupervised. Thank you. And Rachel, I know you're sentimental about Dad's stuff, but we need to be practical. Whatever money we can squeeze out of this estate matters for both of us. After Diane hung up, Rachel immediately called Walt Henderson. I need that favor returned. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. My dad's house. We're moving 7 metal display cases before my brother-in-law's appraiser shows up. The ones you said your sister wanted to trash? Same ones. Turns out they might attract more attention than I want them to attract right now. Say less. I'll bring the truck. Rachel spent Friday evening at the storage facility, rechecking the Foot Locker security, confirming the unit's climate control settings, reviewing Dr. Corey's documentation one more time. $12 million in ancient gold, legally hers, documented properly, authenticated by an expert who'd witnessed the original acquisition. And she had 6 days to keep her sister and Marcus from discovering what their father had hidden behind 73 military medals they dismissed as worthless. Walt arrived at Rachel's father's house at 8:47 a.m. Saturday morning, 13 minutes early in the way military personnel measure time. Early is on time is late, late is unacceptable. Rachel was already inside the study, staring at the 7 metal display cases she'd stacked near the entrance days earlier. In morning light streaming through the windows, they looked heavier than she remembered, more substantial. Each one represented years of her father's service, battles fought, decisions made, sacrifices her family had never fully understood. And they'd hidden $12 million in antiquities her sister had wanted to throw away. You look like you're about to fight a battle, Walt observed from the doorway. My brother-in-law's bringing an appraiser in an hour. I need these cases gone before they arrive. Because the cases are valuable, or because of what they were hiding. Rachel met his eyes. Both. The cases themselves are custom oak, hand-built by my father. Worth maybe $2,000 total, if someone actually valued craftsmanship. But more importantly, they were mounted over something I don't want anyone examining too closely. Walt moved to the wall where the hidden room lay behind its seamless panel. He ran his hand across the paint, feeling for irregularities Rachel knew were there if you looked carefully enough. The panel. Smart move removing the cases. Anyone with half a brain will notice the mounting holes don't match standard hardware. Walt lifted the first display case, testing its weight. These go to your place or storage. Storage. Same unit as the Foot Locker. They worked efficiently, loading cases into Walt's truck bed with the same care they'd used moving the Foot Locker. Each case was wrapped in moving blankets, secured with ratchet straps, treated like the valuable cargo it had become now that Rachel understood what it had protected. By 9:35 a.m., the study stood empty of everything except furniture and bookshelves. The wall where the metal cases had hung showed mounting holes and faint outlines where dust had accumulated around the frames, but no obvious evidence of the hidden panel beyond. Rachel examined it critically with her engineer's eye, looking for tells that might reveal the secret. The vertical seam was nearly invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The paint matched perfectly. Her father had been meticulous about that. The mounting holes from the display cases actually helped, drawing attention to normal wall damage rather than the more significant concealment below. "Looks like any wall where someone removed heavy frames," Walt said, reading her thoughts. "Your brother-in-law's appraiser would need X-ray vision or dumb luck to find anything suspicious, or a reason to look more carefully." "Then don't give them a reason." Walt checked his watch. "You want me to stick around?" "Moral support, intimidation factor, whatever you need." Rachel considered it. Having a retired Marine gunny sergeant present might actually help. Create the impression she had backup, that she wasn't a vulnerable widow easily pressured into hasty decisions. "Stay for the initial meeting. You don't have to say much, just be present." "I can do present." Walt settled into one of the study's leather chairs with the easy confidence of someone who'd occupied hostile territory before. "And Morrison, whatever your brother-in-law's planning, remember you hold all the cards here. You co-own this property. You inherited your father's personal effects. Nobody can force you to do anything you don't want to do." Marcus arrived at 9:58 a.m., precisely on time in the way civilians measure punctuality. He drove a black Mercedes GLS that probably cost more than Rachel's annual engineering income, parked it prominently in the driveway, like a territory marker. The appraiser emerged from the passenger's seat, a thin man in his 50s wearing business casual that screamed expert witness, carrying a leather portfolio and the kind of subtle arrogance that came from years of assigning monetary value to other people's lives. Diane's car pulled up 30 seconds later. She dressed for this, Rachel noticed. Designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost $400, playing the role of sophisticated co-heir rather than the sister who dismissed their father's legacy as trash. "Rachel." Marcus offered his hand, his grip firm and controlling in that way real estate developers perfected. "Thanks for making time. This is Gerald Pemberton, senior appraiser with Pemberton and Associates. He specializes in estate valuations, particularly military collections and historical memorabilia." Gerald nodded without offering his hand. "Ms. Morrison, I understand your father was a career Army officer." "Colonel James Morrison, 32 years of service." "Impressive." Career officers often accumulate items of surprising value, particularly those who serve in combat zones where they had access to, shall we say, unique acquisition opportunities. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Rachel felt Walt shift slightly in the study behind her, a barely perceptible movement that nonetheless communicated readiness. "My father acquired nothing illegally," Rachel said, keeping her voice level. "His service record was exemplary." "Of course." Gerald's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I meant no disrespect. I merely noted that officers serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, or other conflict zones sometimes obtained items of historical or cultural significance, entirely legally through proper channels, but valuable nonetheless." Marcus cleared his throat, redirecting. "Gerald's going to do a thorough walkthrough, Rachel. Look at everything the previous appraiser might have missed. Diane mentioned you've already removed your father's metal collection." "I inherited those personally. They're no longer part of the estate." "Right, of course." Marcus's tone suggested he found this suspicious but couldn't legally challenge it. "What about everything else in the study? Files, books, furniture?" "Still here. Feel free to examine whatever you'd like." They entered the house, Marcus and Gerald moving immediately to the study, while Diane hung back with Rachel in the hallway. "You seem nervous," Diane observed. "I'm not nervous. I'm tired of people treating Dad's life like a clearance sale. No one's disrespecting Dad. We're just being thorough." But Diane's eyes moved past Rachel to where Walt sat in the study's leather chair, his prosthetic leg visible, his posture relaxed but attentive. "Who's that?" "Walt Henderson. A friend. He's helping me move some things." "You brought backup to an estate appraisal?" I brought a friend who understands military service and doesn't see Dad's career as a transaction. Diane's expression tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she followed Marcus into the study, leaving Rachel to trail behind. Gerald was already examining the walls, his attention focused on the mounting holes where the metal cases had hung. He ran his fingers over the paint, measuring distances between holes, comparing them to standard mounting hardware specifications Rachel knew he'd memorized. These display cases, Gerald said without looking at Rachel. Custom built. My father built them himself after he retired. And you removed them when? Recently. A few days ago. I'm taking them to my condo. Gerald produced a measuring tape and documented the mounting pattern, photographing the wall with a professional camera that suggested he took his work seriously. Were the cases heavy? Did they require special mounting hardware? Rachel felt Walt's attention sharpen, even though he didn't move. This was the dangerous question, the one that could lead to closer examination of why the mounting had been so substantial, why her father had used professional-grade anchors for display cases that shouldn't have required such support. They were solid oak with glass fronts, heavy enough to need proper mounting. And behind them, Gerald tapped the wall lightly. Just standard drywall? As far as I know. He tapped again, moving along the wall section, his ear cocked like he was listening for inconsistencies. Rachel's pulse accelerated. The hidden panel was sealed perfectly, but if Gerald decided to investigate more aggressively, if he punched through drywall or brought detection equipment. Walt stood, the movement drawing everyone's attention. "Excuse me, sir." His voice carried Marine Corps authority without aggression. "I helped remove those display cases." The mounting was standard residential installation, drywall anchors into studs. Nothing unusual about the wall construction. Gerald turned to study Walt, his appraiser's eye assessing the prosthetic leg, the military bearing, the implicit message that this wasn't someone who'd tolerate disrespectful probing. "You're familiar with construction?" 20 years Marine Corps, including combat engineering. "I know walls." The statement hung in the air. Gerald's expression suggested he was recalculating whether pursuing this line of investigation was worth potential confrontation with someone who'd literally blown through walls in hostile territory. "I'm sure it's fine," Gerald said finally, returning his attention to his camera. "Just being thorough." Marcus had been examining the filing cabinets during this exchange, pulling drawers open at random, flipping through folders of old service records and deployment orders. "Rachel, did your father keep any personal correspondence? Letters from fellow officers? Anything that might have historical value?" "Some. Most of it's already been sorted. By you, by me, and you haven't found anything significant? Awards, commendations beyond what we already documented, certificates of appreciation from foreign governments." Rachel understood where this was leading. Marcus suspected their father had accumulated something valuable beyond the obvious military decorations. His instincts weren't wrong, they were just looking in the wrong place. "Nothing significant," she lied, the words coming easier now. "Dad kept mostly standard service records and tactical manuals. The estate appraiser already documented anything with resale value." Gerald spent another 30 minutes examining the study, photographing bookshelves, checking furniture for maker's marks, even examining the wood stove in the corner for antique value. He found nothing because there was nothing to find. Rachel's father had been careful to keep the study itself unremarkable, channeling all his preservation effort into the hidden room behind the wall. When Gerald finally moved to other parts of the house, Rachel felt tension drain from her shoulders. Walt caught her eye and nodded fractionally. Immediate danger past. They spent another hour watching Gerald examine the rest of the property, documenting furniture and fixtures with the same methodical attention he'd brought to the study. His final report, delivered verbally in the driveway, confirmed what Rachel already knew. Total additional value beyond the initial appraisal, approximately $800. Some of the kitchen fixtures are higher quality than initially documented. The wood stove in the study is a vintage Vermont castings model worth perhaps $300 to collectors. Everything else matches the previous assessment. Marcus's disappointment was visible. "That's it? $800. Estate appraisals are comprehensive, Mr. Carter. It's rare to find significant, overlooked value. Gerald closed his portfolio with finality. Your father lived modestly, Ms. Morrison. His estate reflects that. Whatever value he accumulated was in his service record rather than material possessions. The irony of that statement would have made Rachel laugh if Diane and Marcus weren't standing right there. $12 million in ancient gold had been hidden 10 feet from where Gerald had been photographing mounting holes, and the expert appraiser had found $800 in kitchen fixtures. After they left, Walt remained behind, helping Rachel lock up the house. That was closer than I liked, he said quietly. Your brother-in-law's suspicious. Doesn't know what he's suspicious of yet, but he knows something doesn't add up. I know. How long before you can liquidate some of those coins? Get enough money to make your sister's questions irrelevant. My lawyer says 30 days for private sales of smaller pieces. 6 months for the full collection. 30 days is manageable. Just keep your head down until then. Walt paused at his truck. And Morrison? Once money starts appearing in your accounts, your sister's going to have questions you can't dodge forever. Start planning your answers now. Rachel spent the weekend preparing documentation for Marcus Chun, organizing her father's files, cross-referencing Dr. Corey's authentication notes with the photographic evidence. By Sunday night, she had a comprehensive package ready for Monday's meeting. Chun called Tuesday morning. I've reviewed everything Dr. Corey sent. The documentation is excellent, better than most military-acquired antiquities I've handled. Your father understood evidence preservation better than most lawyers. He was Special Forces trained. Documentation was survival. It shows. I'm flying to D.C. Thursday. We'll examine the physical coins, verify against Dr. Corey's notes. Then I'll begin the legal process of establishing clear title. Chun paused. Rachel, I need to prepare you for something. Once we file the documentation establishing your ownership, that becomes public record. Anyone searching for recently surfaced antiquities will find it. Meaning your sister will find it. Your brother-in-law will find it. Anyone with motivation to challenge your inheritance will know exactly what you have. Rachel had been expecting this, but hearing it stated plainly still sent anxiety through her chest. Can we delay filing until after the house sale closes? We could, but that creates other problems. If your sister later claims you concealed assets that should have been part of the estate, she could sue for fraud. Better to file properly now. Establish that these were personal effects your father bequeathed to you privately, separate from the estate. And deal with Diane's reaction when she realizes what I found. Family conflict over inheritance is unfortunately common. That's why proper documentation matters. It protects you legally even when relationships deteriorate. They arranged to meet Thursday at the storage facility. Chun would bring authentication equipment, a notary, and contracts establishing Heritage Law Group as Rachel's legal representation. Wednesday brought an unexpected text from Diane. Dad's house closes Friday. Final walkthrough tomorrow at 3 p.m. You should be there. Rachel responded, I'll try. Work's crazy right now. Diane's reply came immediately. This is the last time we'll be in Dad's house. I know you're struggling with this, but closure matters. Please come. The message felt genuine, without Marcus's mercenary undertones or Gerald's suspicious probing. For a moment, Rachel glimpsed her sister beneath the real estate agent persona, someone also mourning their father, also struggling with the dissolution of family history into real estate transactions. She texted back, I'll be there. Thursday's meeting with Marcus Chun was methodical and thorough. He arrived at the storage facility with 2 assistants carrying equipment that looked like it belonged in a museum conservation lab. Scales accurate to milligrams, spectroscopy devices for metallurgical analysis, magnification tools for examining mint marks and surface wear. Chun himself was younger than Rachel expected. Late 30s, Chinese-American, moving with the careful precision of someone who handled irreplaceable objects daily. He examined the footlocker first, photographing the seals and labels before opening it. Your father's documentation is military grade, he said, reading the acquisition notes. Date, location, circumstances, witnesses. This is better chain of custody than most museums maintain. He spent 4 hours examining every coin, weighing them, photographing both faces, comparing them against Dr. Curry's notes and historical references he'd brought in leather-bound catalogs. The 3 presentation dinars received extra attention. Chun handled them with cotton gloves, examining them under magnification that revealed details invisible to naked eyes. "These are extraordinary," he said finally. "Dr. Curry's authentication is correct. These are Harun al-Rashid presentation pieces from 802 CE. There are only 4 confirmed examples in institutional collections. Yours would be the 5th, 6th, and 7th known to exist." What does that mean for value? It means we don't auction these. We negotiate private sales to institutions that understand what they're acquiring. Chin set down his loupe, meeting Rachel's eyes. The British Museum would pay $5 million for one of these. The Metropolitan Museum of Art would pay more. The Smithsonian has been trying to acquire an al-Rashid presentation dinar for 40 years. They'd pay whatever it took. The numbers were too large again, abstract in a way that prevented emotional processing. Rachel forced herself to think practically. And the smaller coins? The ones I can sell quickly? Those we can move through private dealers. You have about 20 dinars that are valuable but not historically critical. 8th and 9th century pieces in excellent condition, worth 50 to 150,000 each. I can have buyers lined up within 2 weeks, money in your account within 30 days. How much total for quick sales? Chun consulted his notes. If we sell 20 of the smaller pieces, you're looking at 1.8 to 2.2 million. After my fee and dealer commissions, you'd net about 1.5 million. 1.5 million within 30 days. Enough to pay off Rachel's mortgage, fund Sophie's college completely, establish financial security that Derek's departure had destroyed. Enough to make Diane's questions about the house sale irrelevant. "Do it," Rachel said. "Start with those 20 coins." Chin nodded as if he'd expected this decision. "I'll need you to sign several documents. Ownership attestation, representation agreement, sale authorization. My notary's outside. This will take about an hour." The paperwork was dense with legal language Rachel's engineering brain struggled to parse quickly. Chun walked her through every clause, explaining what she was authorizing, what protection she was receiving, what obligation she was accepting. The key provision was clear. Heritage Law Group would establish legal title to all 71 coins, defend against any challenges from foreign governments or other claimants, and manage sales to maximize value while protecting Rachel's interests. In exchange, Chin would receive 15% of all proceeds. Rachel signed, the notary witnessed, and suddenly she had legal representation protecting $12 million in authenticated Islamic antiquities her father had hidden for 30 years. "One more thing," Chin said as they finished. "I'll file the ownership documentation with the Virginia Clerk of Court tomorrow. That establishes public record of your inheritance. Expect questions from family members within a week once they discover the filing. How will they discover it? Public records are searchable. Anyone looking for assets associated with your father's estate will find the filing. It's designed to be transparent. That's what protects you legally." Rachel understood. Transparency was both shield and exposure. By publicly establishing ownership, she prevented later accusations of concealment. But she also invited exactly the family conflict Walt had warned about. "I'll deal with Diane when the time comes. You'll deal with her from a position of legal strength. That matters." Chin began packing his equipment with the same careful precision he'd brought to examining the coins. "Rachel, your father did something remarkable in 1991. He preserved cultural heritage that would have been destroyed or looted. Yes, he benefited by keeping it. But he also waited 30 years before realizing any value. That kind of restraint is rare. He said in his letter that desperate people are humble enough to see what's actually there instead of what they want to find. He was right, and you were desperate enough to find what he left you. That's not luck. That's recognition rewarded." After Chin left, Rachel sat alone in the storage unit looking at the footlocker that had already been examined, authenticated, and legally documented. The coins inside were no longer her father's secret. They were her authenticated property, protected by legal representation, ready to be transformed into the financial security she desperately needed. Tomorrow she'd attend the final walkthrough at her father's house. Friday, it would close, the property transferring to buyers who'd never know a decorated colonel had hidden $12 million behind his metal collection. And within 30 days, Rachel would have $1.5 million deposited in her account from selling coins Diane had dismissed as worthless. The vindication would be sweet, she thought, but it would also be bitter because it would prove that her sister had never understood their father at all. Wednesday's final walkthrough felt more like a funeral than a real estate transaction. Rachel arrived at 2:45 p.m., finding Diane already inside, moving through rooms with the slightly dazed expression of someone confronting the end of something they hadn't properly mourned yet. "Hey," Diane said, her voice subdued. "Thanks for coming." Of course. They walked through the house together in silence, each room triggering memories neither of them voiced. The kitchen where their father had cooked Sunday breakfasts with military precision. The living room where he'd watched news coverage of Middle Eastern conflicts with a haunted attention of someone who'd been there. The study where he'd spent retirement organizing his service records, polishing his medals, protecting the secret that would save his daughter's life. Marcus arrived at 3 p.m. with the buyer's agent, a cheerful woman who seemed oblivious to the emotional weight the house carried. They conducted their inspection efficiently, checking fixtures, photographing rooms, confirming everything matched the purchase agreement. In the study, the buyer's agent paused at the wall where Rachel's father had mounted his metal cases. "This wall's been repainted recently." Rachel's pulse kicked. "My father maintained the house carefully. He repainted regularly. The color's slightly different here." The agent gestured at the section where the hidden room lay. "See how it's just a shade darker than the surrounding areas?" Diane moved closer, examining the wall Rachel had been trying not to look at. "I don't see a difference. It's subtle. Just interesting that someone would repaint one section so carefully." The agent shrugged, losing interest. "Sellers do all kinds of things before listing. Doesn't affect the sale." Marcus, however, was paying attention. He approached the wall, running his hand across the paint the way Gerald Pemberton had done Saturday. "Rachel, did you or your father do any repairs in here recently? The texture feels different. Dad maintained the house himself. I don't know everything he did." Marcus tapped the wall lightly, his real estate developer instincts apparently including casual structural assessment. "Sounds solid. Just curious about the paint difference." Rachel forced herself to breathe normally, to project unconcerned acceptance rather than guilty knowledge. The hidden panel was sealed perfectly. Unless Marcus decided to punch through drywall, based purely on paint color variation, there was nothing to find. The moment passed. Marcus moved on to examining the windows, and the agent completed her walkthrough without further questions about walls or paint or anything else that might reveal secrets. After they left, Diane remained behind with Rachel. They stood in the study together, looking at the empty room that had defined so much of their father's retirement. "I know you think I didn't love him," Diane said quietly. Rachel turned, surprised by the vulnerability in her sister's voice. "I don't think that." "Yes, you do. You think I was mercenary about the estate, that I didn't respect his service, that I wanted to trash his medals like they meant nothing." Diane's eyes were red-rimmed, threatening tears she was clearly fighting to contain. "But Rachel, he was gone so much when we were kids. He missed everything that mattered. And after Mom died, he just withdrew, became this distant figure I couldn't reach. He was grieving. So was I. But nobody cared because I wasn't the good daughter who understood military sacrifice. I was just the one who wanted her father to actually be present instead of noble and distant and always choosing duty over family." The pain in Diane's voice was genuine, and Rachel felt her own resentment soften slightly. They'd experienced their father differently. Rachel had seen his strength and principle. Diane had felt his absence and prioritization of military service over family connection. "I'm not saying your feelings aren't valid," Rachel said carefully. "But he did love us. He just didn't know how to show it the way you needed. And now he's gone, and this house is gone, and everything I could have said to him stays unsaid forever. Diane wiped her eyes roughly. I'm sorry I pushed so hard about clearing the estate. Marcus was right that we needed to be practical, but maybe I used that as an excuse not to feel things. Rachel felt guilt twist in her chest. Her sister was genuinely mourning, genuinely struggling with unresolved father-daughter conflict, while Rachel was hiding $12 million in antiquities that would have been part of the estate if their father had documented them officially. She almost told Diane right then, almost explained about the hidden room, the footlocker, the coins that represented their father's final act of protection toward the daughter he knew would value preservation over profit. But Walt's warning echoed. Money makes people creative with justifications. And Dr. Corey's, don't let family pressure make you careless with that trust. The house closes tomorrow, Rachel said instead. Whatever we didn't say to Dad, we can't change now. But we can honor what he built by not letting regret poison what we have left. Diane nodded, accepting this deflection. They left the house together, Diane locking the door for the last time, Rachel carrying memories of a study that held secrets her sister would never know. 2 weeks later, Marcus Chun called with news that transformed abstraction into reality. First round of sales is complete. 20 dinars sold through private dealers to pre-approved collectors. Total gross proceeds, $2.1 million. After fees and commissions, your net is $1.7 million. Money will wire to your account tomorrow. Rachel was sitting at her kitchen table when the call came. She'd been reviewing Sophie's college application essays, helping her daughter navigate the complexities of presenting yourself on paper to strangers who decide your future based on how well you could articulate carefully curated authenticity. $1.7 million, Rachel repeated, testing the words for reality. Tomorrow. And Rachel, the remaining 51 coins are getting serious interest. The 3 presentation dinars especially. I have preliminary inquiries from the British Museum, the Met, and a private collector in Dubai who specializes in Islamic antiquities. How much are they offering? We haven't started formal negotiations yet, but the preliminary numbers being discussed are significant. For all 3 presentation dinars together, we're looking at minimum $12 million, possibly as high as $18 million, depending on how aggressive the bidding gets. $12 to $18 million for 3 coins, plus whatever the remaining 48 coins would bring. Chun had estimated another $3 to $4 million for those. Total collection value, $15 to $22 million. After Chen's 15% fee, Rachel would net roughly $12 to $18 million. The number was too large to process emotionally. It exceeded comprehension, broke through into territory where money stopped being currency and became abstract capability. The ability to solve problems, create opportunities, establish security so profound that future disasters wouldn't threaten fundamental survival. How long until we know final numbers? Rachel asked. 3 to 6 months for the presentation dinars. Those require careful negotiation with institutions. The remaining regular dinars we can sell incrementally over the next year. But Rachel, after tomorrow's wire, you're going to have $1.7 million in your account. That's going to raise questions. I know. Have you decided what you'll tell people? Rachel had been thinking about this since signing Chen's representation agreement. The truth was complicated but defensible. Her father had acquired antiquities legally during Desert Storm, preserved them for 30 years, bequeathed them to her privately separate from his estate. She owned them absolutely, had authenticated them through proper channels, was selling them legally through qualified representation. But the truth would also reveal that she'd hidden this discovery from Diane during the estate settlement, that she'd removed items from their father's house without disclosing their value, that she'd let her sister believe the metal collection was worthless while knowing it concealed millions of dollars. Legally defensible, morally ambiguous, family relationships destroyed. I'll tell them the truth, Rachel said finally, after the wire clears. Once the money's in my account and legally protected. Smart. Money in hand is stronger than money in negotiation. Chin paused. Rachel, I've handled a lot of inheritance cases. This is going to change your relationships with everyone who knows you. Some will be happy for you. Most will wonder why they weren't included in your good fortune. A few will resent you actively. I'm prepared for that. Are you? Because preparation and experience are different things. When your sister realizes you inherited $12 million your father hid specifically from her, that's going to hurt her in ways money can't fix. Rachel thought about Diane crying in their father's study, mourning unresolved conflicts and absent fathers. I know. The wire arrived Thursday morning at 9:23 a.m. Rachel received an email from her bank flagged for fraud review. Large deposit detected. Please confirm this transfer is legitimate. She called the bank, verified the transfer, confirmed it was legitimate. The customer service representative's voice shifted when she checked Rachel's new account balance. Ms. Morrison, you may want to speak with one of our wealth management advisors. For accounts over $1 million, we provide specialized services. $1 million. The threshold where banks started treating you differently, where financial advisors appeared offering specialized services, where the fundamental relationship between you and money transformed from scarcity management to wealth optimization. Rachel had crossed that threshold overnight. She spent Thursday in a daze, working through her engineering projects on autopilot, while her phone periodically buzzed with notifications from her banking app. Account balance: $1,847,392.18. The number included the wire transfer plus her existing savings. $1.8 million. Enough to pay off her mortgage completely, fund Sophie's college at any school she wanted, establish an emergency fund that would sustain them for years. Friday morning, Rachel paid off her condo mortgage online. $287,000 transferred from checking to her lender's account, eliminating the monthly payment that had consumed a quarter of her income since Derek left. She established a $529 college savings account for Sophie, depositing $200,000, enough to fund 4 years in an Ivy League school with no loans, no financial aid applications, no stress about whether education would bury her daughter in debt. She transferred $100,000 to her checking account for immediate expenses, put another $500,000 in conservative index funds, and left the remaining $760,000 untouched while she consulted with the wealth management advisor her bank had assigned. By Friday afternoon, Rachel Morrison owned her home outright, had secured her daughter's educational future, and possessed enough liquid wealth to live comfortably for 5 years without working if necessary. And she still had 51 coins being sold incrementally over the next 6 months, with final proceeds expected to reach another $10 to $16 million. The vindication she'd anticipated felt hollow without someone to share it with. Sophie didn't yet know. Rachel wanted to tell her in person, carefully, explaining the responsibility that came with sudden wealth. Walt knew the basics, but not the numbers. Dr. Corey was in Cairo. Marcus Chun was professional representation, not personal support, which left Diane. Rachel called her sister Saturday morning, before courage could fail. Rachel, hey, what's up? D, I need to tell you something about Dad's estate. Something I found after the house sale closed. Silence stretched for 3 seconds. What did you find? Can you come to my condo? This isn't a phone conversation. Rachel, you're scaring me. What's going on? I'm not in trouble. Nobody's in danger. I found something of Dad's that I need to explain in person. Can you come today? Diane arrived an hour later, parking her Mercedes in the visitor spot with the slightly aggressive precision that characterized everything she did. Rachel had coffee ready, had cleaned her condo, nervous energy channeled into domestic preparation. They sat in Rachel's living room, afternoon light streaming through windows that overlooked Wilson Boulevard. Rachel had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, but now that Diane was actually here, the prepared words evaporated. When I was removing Dad's metal cases from his study, Rachel began, I found something hidden behind them. A room. A sealed space Dad had built into the house's original construction. Diane's expression shifted from concern to confusion. A hidden room? Why would Dad build a hidden room? To protect something he acquired during Desert Storm. Something valuable that he couldn't officially report without losing it to government bureaucracy or international claims. Valuable how? Weapons? Cash? Antiquities? Ancient Islamic gold coins from the Abbasid Caliphate, 8th through 11th century. 71 pieces total, authenticated by experts, legally acquired and properly documented. Diane stared at Rachel like she was speaking a foreign language. Gold coins. Ancient coins. In Dad's house. Hidden behind his metal collection in a room he sealed in 1994. He left me a letter explaining how he acquired them, why he hid them, and instructions to contact an expert who witnessed the original acquisition. And you found this one? 3 weeks ago, when I was removing the metal cases you wanted me to throw away. The implication landed. Diane's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock, realization, hurt, anger settling into something cold and controlled. 3 weeks ago, before the house closed, before Marcus's appraiser came, you found millions of dollars in hidden antiquities and didn't tell me. I didn't know they were worth millions until I had them authenticated. And by then, I'd already consulted with a lawyer who explained that Dad left them to me personally, separate from the estate. Separate from the estate. Diane's voice sharpened. How convenient. How much are we talking about, Rachel? This was the moment. The number that would transform their relationship irreversibly. Total collection value is estimated at $15 to $22 million. I've already sold 20 coins for $1.7 million. The remaining 51 will sell over the next 6 months. Diane stood abruptly, moving to the window, her back to Rachel. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion Rachel couldn't quite identify. $15 million. Hidden in Dad's house. And you kept it secret. Dad kept it secret. For 30 years. He left it specifically for me, Dee. In his letter, he said he knew you'd sell everything immediately, that I was the one he trusted to understand preservation over profit. Diane spun around, tears visible now. So he loved you more. Is that what you're telling me? That Dad trusted you and didn't trust me? That even in death he chose you over me? That's not. Yes, it is. Diane's voice cracked. He hid millions of dollars where only you would find it. He wrote you a letter explaining everything. He made sure you'd inherit wealth that would transform your life while I got exactly half of the house sale and nothing else. How is that not choosing you over me? Rachel felt her own eyes burning. He made that choice because he knew our situations were different. You have Marcus, you have financial security. I have Sophie and a failed marriage and an engineering consultancy that barely covers expenses. Dad knew I was desperate. So poverty makes you more deserving? Struggle makes you the better daughter. No, but desperation made me careful with what I found. Made me authenticate properly, establish legal ownership, protect the collection instead of rushing to liquidate it. Rachel paused, choosing her next words carefully. Dee, if you'd found those coins, what would you have done? Diane opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. The answer was obvious to both of them. I would have split them with you, she said finally, but the words lacked conviction. Would you? Or would Marcus have convinced you to keep everything, arguing that you found them, so you deserve them? Would you have consulted lawyers about maximizing value? Or would you have sold them quickly through the first dealer who offered money? That's not fair. It's honest. Dad knew our characters, Dee. He knew you'd see dollar signs where I'd see historical artifacts needing preservation. That doesn't make either of us better or worse. It just makes us different. Diane wiped her eyes roughly. So what now? You're a millionaire, and I'm supposed to be happy for you. I'm hoping you can understand why Dad made the choice he made. Why he trusted me with this legacy. Legacy? Diane laughed bitterly. Is that what we're calling it? Dad left you millions of dollars and left me with the knowledge that, even dead, he still valued you more. Rachel felt the conversation slipping away from any hope of resolution. The house sale gave you $1.1 million after taxes. You're not exactly struggling. This isn't about money, Rachel. It's about being the daughter who wasn't good enough, the one Dad didn't trust, the one he excluded from his final act of parenting because I didn't meet his standards of worthiness. The pain in Diane's voice was real and deep, rooted in decades of feeling secondary to their father's military career and to Rachel's easier relationship with his values. Money had amplified that pain, but it hadn't created it. I'm sorry Dad's choice hurt you, Rachel said quietly. but I'm not apologizing for inheriting what he left me. He earned those coins through 32 years of service. He preserved them for 30 years. He had the right to leave them to whoever he chose. And he chose you. Message received. Diane moved toward the door. I hope the money makes you happy, Rachel. I hope it fixes everything in your life that was broken. Because it's going to cost you your sister. Dee, wait. But Diane was already gone, the door closing with controlled precision that hurt more than slamming would have. Rachel stood in her suddenly too quiet living room, looking at the space where her sister had been, and wondered if vindication was supposed to feel this much like loss. 6 months passed in a strange duality, external transformation, internal consistency. Rachel's financial situation changed dramatically while her daily life remained surprisingly similar. She still worked as a structural engineer, though she cut her hours back to part-time, accepting only projects that interested her rather than every client who could pay. She still lived in the same Arlington condo, though she renovated it thoroughly. New kitchen, updated bathrooms, proper insulation, the kind of improvements she'd been deferring for years. Sophie's college applications went out with the confidence of someone who didn't need to check the applying for financial aid box. When acceptance letters arrived, including one from Stanford, her first choice, there was no anxious calculation about whether they could afford it. They could, easily. The remaining 51 coins sold incrementally through Marcus Chin's carefully managed negotiations. The 3 presentation dinars went to different institutions. One to the British Museum for $4.8 million, one to the Metropolitan Museum of Art for $5.2 million, one to a private collector in Qatar for $6.1 million who agreed to eventually donate it to the Museum of Islamic Art in Doha. The regular dinars sold through private dealers and auction houses, bringing another $4.3 million total. Final proceeds, after all fees and commissions, $18.7 million. Rachel's net worth, including her paid-off condo and investment accounts, $19.1 million. She established a foundation in her father's name, the Colonel James Morrison Legacy Fund, dedicated to supporting military families facing financial hardship after service-related deaths or injuries. Initial endowment, $2 million, generating approximately $80,000 annually for grants and support programs. She funded Sophie's complete college education, including graduate school if she chose to pursue it, $400,000 in a dedicated trust. She purchased a modest 3-bedroom house in Falls Church with cash, $850,000 for a property that would have been impossible to afford on her engineering salary, but was reasonable for someone with $19 million. And she tried, repeatedly, to contact Diane. Her sister didn't respond to calls, texts, or emails. Marcus acted as intermediary for the final estate paperwork, tax documents, and closing statements that confirmed the house sale had been completed properly. But Diane herself remained absent, choosing distance over reconciliation. Rachel understood. Money had revealed a truth Diane couldn't accept, that their father had valued one daughter's principles over the other daughter's presence. That truth predated the inheritance, but wealth had made it impossible to ignore. 8 months after finding the hidden room, Rachel attended Sophie's high school graduation. Her daughter walked across the stage with academic honors and a full scholarship to Stanford's engineering program, a scholarship she didn't need financially but had earned through merit. Walt was there, bringing his cynical humor and genuine affection. Dr. Corey had sent a card from Egypt, congratulating Sophie and thanking Rachel for properly honoring Colonel Morrison's legacy. Marcus Chin sent flowers with a note. Your father would be proud. Not of the money, of what you did with it. Diane's absence was noticeable. Sophie asked about it once, and Rachel explained honestly. Your aunt is dealing with complicated feelings about Grandpa's estate. She needs time. Will she ever come back? I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes family relationships break in ways that can't be fully repaired. We hope for reconciliation, but we can't force it. Sophie, mature beyond her 18 years, seemed to accept this. Are you okay? With Aunt Diane being gone? Rachel considered the question carefully. I miss her. I wish Dad's final gift hadn't cost me my sister. But I don't regret inheriting what he left me, and I don't regret using it to give you a future without financial stress. So yes, I'm okay. Just sad about what it cost. That night, alone in her new house in Falls Church, Rachel returned to her father's letter for the first time in months. She'd kept it in a fireproof safe along with the original documentation Chun had used to establish legal title. She read it again slowly, paying attention to passages she'd skimmed in her initial desperate reading. The items in this footlocker are not common. They're not easily valued. They require expertise most appraisers don't possess. Her father had known exactly what he was leaving her, not just wealth, but responsibility. The kind of legacy that required careful handling, expert guidance, ethical consideration. Whatever you do with this, whatever decisions you make, know that I trust you completely. You've already proven you can survive loss, betrayal, single parenthood, and financial hardship without compromising your principles. He'd seen her struggles after Derek left, had watched her maintain integrity while finances crumbled, had recognized that desperation hadn't corrupted her character. That recognition had earned her the inheritance Diane would never receive. Take care of my legacy, not the medals on the wall, but the future I'm giving you now. Rachel had done exactly that. She'd authenticated the coins properly, sold them legally, used the proceeds to establish security for Sophie and support for other military families. The medals themselves, those 73 pieces of metal Diane had dismissed as trash, sat in climate-controlled storage, preserved carefully until Rachel decided how to honor them properly. Maybe a military museum donation. Maybe a permanent display at the Morrison Legacy Fund's headquarters once that was established. Maybe something else entirely. But they would be honored, because they protected the secret that had saved Rachel's life. 1 year after finding the hidden room, Rachel received an unexpected phone call from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Morrison? This is Sergeant Linda Chun, U.S. Army Civil Affairs. I'm calling about the Morrison Legacy Fund application we submitted 3 months ago. Rachel shifted mental gears. The foundation had begun accepting applications in its 6th month of operation. She'd hired a professional administrator, but Rachel personally reviewed every request. I remember your application, Sergeant Chun. Your husband was wounded in Afghanistan, medical retirement, struggling with civilian employment. Yes, ma'am. We were denied everywhere we applied for assistance. Then someone told me about your foundation. Your administrator called last week, saying we'd been approved for a $12,000 emergency grant. That's correct. To cover your husband's retraining program and 3 months of living expenses while he transitions to civilian work. Sergeant Chin's voice was thick with emotion. Ma'am, I don't know how to thank you. This grant is the difference between keeping our apartment and living in our car. My husband broke down, crying, when I told him. Rachel felt her own throat tighten. Your family's sacrifice deserves support, Sergeant. That's what the foundation exists for. Can I ask, why did you start this? The website says it's in memory of Colonel James Morrison. Was he your father? He was. He must have been an incredible man to inspire this kind of legacy. Rachel thought about the hidden room, the 30-year secret, the calculated preservation that had made this conversation possible. He was complicated, Rachel said honestly. Sometimes absent, always principled, occasionally frustrating. But yes, he was incredible in ways that took me a long time to understand. After the call ended, Rachel pulled up the foundation's financial dashboard. In its first year, the Morrison Legacy Fund had distributed $73,000 to 11 military families facing various crises: medical bills, emergency housing, retraining programs, legal assistance. The $2 million endowment generated enough annual income to sustain this support indefinitely, even growing slightly each year as investment returns exceeded grant disbursements. Her father's hidden coins were still doing what he'd intended, protecting desperate people humble enough to ask for help. 18 months after the inheritance, Diane finally responded to one of Rachel's monthly messages. Her text was brief. Can we talk? Not about money. About Dad. They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Alexandria, halfway between their homes. Diane looked older somehow, as if the intervening months had accelerated time's passage. Rachel probably looked different too. "You look good," Diane said, the observation carrying no hostility, just fact. "You too." They ordered coffee, sat at a corner table, navigated through small talk that felt like defusing explosives, careful, deliberate, aware that wrong words could detonate everything. Finally, Diane set down her cup and met Rachel's eyes directly. "I've been angry for 18 months. Angry at you, angry at Dad, angry at the universe for making me the daughter who wasn't enough. And that anger was destroying me." Rachel waited, letting her sister control the pace. "My therapist, yes, I started therapy, helped me understand something. Dad's choice to leave you the coins wasn't about loving you more. It was about knowing what each of us needed and what each of us would do with sudden wealth." Let me finish." Diane held up her hand. "I would have sold those coins immediately. I wouldn't have authenticated them carefully or established legal protection or used the money to help other people. I would have seen dollar signs and upgraded my lifestyle and maybe bought Marcus that boat he's been wanting. That's who I am. That doesn't make you wrong. No, but it makes Dad's choice understandable. He didn't trust me with preservation because preservation isn't how I think. You see historical artifacts. I see assets to be liquidated. Neither is morally superior, but only one of those perspectives honors what Dad spent 30 years protecting." Rachel felt tears threatening. "I've missed you. I missed you too. And I'm sorry I let money destroy our relationship for 18 months. What Dad left you was his to leave. I don't have to like his choice, but I can't keep punishing you for inheriting what he wanted you to have." They talked for 3 hours, not repairing everything. Some cracks would remain permanently, but establishing foundation for rebuilding. Diane was genuinely interested in the Morrison Legacy Fund, asked detailed questions about grant criteria and application processes. "Could Marcus and I contribute to the endowment?" she asked. "Not a lot, but something meaningful, like $25,000. Rachel felt something loosen in her chest. Dad would have loved that. The fund accepting contributions from both his daughters. Yeah, he would have. Diane smiled, genuine warmth returning to her expression for the first time since the inheritance revelation. "And Rachel, I'm proud of you. For handling the coins properly, for establishing the foundation, for not letting money corrupt you. Dad was right to trust you with this." They left the coffee shop with plans to meet again the following week, with Diane promising to bring Marcus, with Rachel agreeing to show them the Foundation's first-year impact report. It wasn't complete reconciliation, but it was a start. 2 years after finding the hidden room, Rachel stood in her father's study one final time. The new owners were taking possession next week, the property having changed hands 3 times since Marcus sold it originally. This would be Rachel's last opportunity to see the space where everything had changed. The wall where the medals had hung was painted a different color now, pale blue instead of forest green. But if you looked carefully, you could still see faint outlines where the display cases had been mounted, shadows that hadn't quite disappeared under new paint. Rachel placed her hand on the wall where the hidden panel lay sealed behind layers of drywall and paint. The new owners had no idea what existed there. The room was empty now, its purpose fulfilled, but its structure remained intact, a memorial to her father's 30-year secret. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, "for trusting me, for protecting me, for knowing I'd need this before I knew I'd need it." She left the house without looking back, drove to Falls Church where Sophie was home from Stanford for summer break, where Walt was coming over for dinner, where life continued in its transformed but fundamentally consistent patterns. The coins her father had preserved for 30 years had given Rachel security, established her daughter's future, created a foundation supporting desperate military families, and taught her that wealth revealed character rather than creating it. Colonel James Morrison had hidden $12 million behind 73 military medals, knowing that only the daughter who valued preservation over profit would be desperate enough and humble enough to find it. He'd been right, and in being right, he'd saved Rachel's life in ways that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with trust, legacy, and the understanding that sometimes the most valuable inheritances are the ones hidden behind what everyone else dismisses as worthless. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.